Northern Paiute language. Lesson 16. Hanote, hanote, hanote. Which place or whereabouts exactly. Hano means where. Hanote is a more specific form of where. The te on the end refers to a place, a more specific locale. Which specific place? Hanote. In Paiute country, we have multiple areas that are designated by certain names. Sometimes we call them band place names, but it's not an exact title, but we just use it for lack of a better term. So traditional band place names for the Nima. This is not the entire nation. It's only a select area that we'll be using. Number 1, Kudzabigwete, Kudzabigwete, Kudzabigwete. Number 2, Pogawete, Pogawete, which many of the older people compounded together to say Pogait, Pogait. Pogait is a compound form of Pogawete. Number 3, Onabigwete, Onabigwete, Onabigwete. Number 4, Pozidagwete, Pozidagwete, Pozidagwete. Number 5, Tabuziwete, Tabuziwete, Tabuziwete. Number 6, Agaiwete, Agaiwete, Agaiwete. Number 7, Wiawete, Wiawete, Wiawete. Number 8, Pagwiwete, Pagwiwete, Pagwiwete. Number 9, Kamewete, Kamewete, Kamewete. 10, Toiwete, Toiwete, Toiwete. 11, Kuyuiwete, Kuyuiwete, Kuyuiwete. And 12, Wasiuwete, Wasiuwete, Wasiuwete. I didn't translate these on purpose because these are the true names of the areas within Nimurip, which is Paiute country. And so looking at this map, this sort of shows where some of these areas are that I'm talking about. We have Pitanagua, which means the south. This is all the areas of the Mono and Owens Valley Paiute Indians. So that's like North Fork and down to Sycamore, Dunlap, Fresno. And over here, Benton and Bishop and Big Pine, all we classify as Pitanagua, which means the South people. And one of the main areas coming north is Kudzabigwete. Kudzabigwete is the area around Mono Lake. Kudzabi, meaning brine fly larvas. And other areas around that, Pagwihu. Pagwihu is the area of Crowley Lake and Mammoth Mountain. And in between that and Kudzabi is Piagawete, Piagawete, or Wolobiwete, where all the bull pine trees are, where the Piaga caterpillars are. And to the west of that, we have the areas known as Wiawete, Wiawete. Wia is like acorn in Paiute. And this is from all the way up on the Stanislaus River by Donnell Valley, Pinecrest, coming down to Hetch Hetchy and Yosemite Valley. All that area on the western side of the Sierra Nevada were Paiute lands known as Wiawete. And over here in the east of Kudzabi, we have Odzabigwete, Odzabigwete. And there's not much out there nowadays, but back in the day, it was an area of lots of marshes, places like Columbus Salt Marsh, Mina and Luning, and different areas where shallow playas, where there was lots of cattails and lots of tules growing, possibly even minnow fish and birds and all of that. And it was Odzabidikare. And Ozavi is like a type of Alka-Seltzer or alkali salt. And north of Kudzavi, we have Poga or Pogait, which is the Bridgeport area. Onabi, Colville, Antelope Valley, Topaz area. Weba is the area over by Fletcher Basin. And up here on the south side of Walker Lake, we have Pagwiwete. Pagwi means fish in general, because they ate a lot of chub and suckerfish on the bottom side of this lake. And over here north of Pogawete or Pogait is Posidagwait. Posidagwait is the area from Desert Creek in the north down to Sweetwater in the south, all called Posidagwait. Then Tabuziwete, Smith and Mason valleys, the areas along the river. And North Walker Lake is Agaiwete. And so this border, that line that we have over here, the Wasio means the Washoe Indians, Wasio. And Washos, they have really claimed a lot of Paiute territory nowadays because a lot of the Paiute tribal governments don't have cultural departments to contest these things. But back in the old days, the Paiutes didn't even consider the Washoe as possessing land. They didn't consider Carson Valley Washoe land. They didn't consider Carson or Reno or Sierra Valley or any of these areas to be Washoe. They always considered Washoe to be a new arrival to the area, and they liked to live up here in the area by Markleyville and Lake Tahoe, areas which the Paiutes didn't really stay in. But the Paiutes did stay in the area over by the northern side of Carson Valley, where the two rivers come together. And they called that place Wovida Wanede or Wovida Boate, something to that effect. But Totoi also was the area of Carson Valley, and that meant dark colored tule place because it was just a big giant marsh. And even where Carson City is, that was a big marsh area where the Paiutes stayed at the Uritiriwawete, around the hot springs. And even going up where Washoe Valley is, where they call Washoe Lake, Paiutes called it Sai or Sai Baninad, not to be confused with the Sai that are the enemies of the Paiute or the Pit River Indians, but Sai, the area of the cattails. And so a lot of these different places we're not going to get into on this video, but just remembering the Paiute areas that we're talking about. Nowadays, we hear a lot about Paiute Shoshone. Back in the old days in our area, there was no such thing. Tobono were the Shoshone people, or people now known as Shoshone, who lived far out in the east, and they never came into these areas. And so they were just called the people that were way over there somewhere. They were known of, but they were never over here. So there was never no such thing as Paiute Shoshone, just as there was nothing known as Paiute Washoe back in the old days, because they didn't really get along in the old days. If Washoes came into Paiute territory, they usually ran them out, but they did allow them in some of these other areas. Yesh. We will go over the use of the postpositional suffix te in lesson 17, because we're talking about we and gwe, but use wete and gwete. We're just going to use the we, gwe, and not the te. So we, gwe, postpositional noun suffix, means it talks about places. So what distinguishes whether the G, like there and there, goes in front of the W or not depends on the sound preceding it. Okay, and this is something that we learn through repetition, whether it's going to be way or gwe. Okay, and so we, with the alphabet we're using, WEI is more proper of spelling that, because the E in the way we're spelling is an sound, and the I is an E sound. So what they call a diphthong is two vowels combining to make one sound. And E together make an A sound. So EI is a. Sometimes we spell it with the AY, just like a simplified spelling, but more properly we'll use that. And a lot of the Northern Paiutes, they're using this Wycliffe alphabet where the I is making an A sound and an I sound. There's no distinguishing between the two. So we use EI for A and AI for I. Okay, as a postpositional suffix, it indicates place, the place of this or that. But also in other contexts, it can mean in, at, or within. Yesh, hanno. Yate, hanno. This is Pogait or Pogawete, Bridgeport area. Root word is poga, poga, also pronounced poka, poka, which is a type of sunflower, more specifically arrowleaf balsam root. Way means the place of. Pogawe, Pogawe. Remember, we're not using the t at this time. Pogawe, the place of the sunflowers, the place of the sunflowers. So believe it or not, back in the day, these hills were all filled with arrowleaf balsam root. They would be burned annually in some places, even replanted. There was so much in this area that that's what it was known for. Even though there's many other foods, this valley was called Pogait. Yesh, hanno. Yate, hanno. Wiawete, sometimes called Awia or Pamiwete, but we're going to call it Wiawete to simplify it. So we are is the acorn from the black oak tree. Way, the place of. Wiawe or Wiawe, the place of the acorn, Yosemite Valley. And of course, this could be used loosely in other places that we're talking about where we gather acorn, but mostly it's used for Yosemite. Wiawe. Yesh hanno. Yate hanno. This is what we call Posidagwe. Posidagwe, sweet water. From the noun Posidapi. Posidapi, which means wild clover. Posidapi, wild clover. Way or Gwe means the place of. Posidagwe. Posidagwe, the place of the clover. Okay, notice the P on Posidapi. Posida was removed. Okay, this happens sometimes, and we're going to go over that pretty soon. Yeshe, hannoyo, hannoyo. This is Kudzabi Gwete, from the word Kudzabi, Kudzabi, which means brine fly larva. It's a noun, it's a little creature. Gwe, or way, the place of. Kudzabi Gwe, the place of the Kudzabi. Yesh, hannoyo, yate, hanno. This is Onabi Gwete, Onabi Gwete. Onabi means salt. Gwe, place of. Onabi Gwe, place of the salt. Yesh, talking about these words that end in V, B, Ba, B, and P, like Onabi, Kudzabi, Tebapi, Pozidapi, Wiaba. All these, they have all of these, they're very much the same in meaning. And what we call it in grammar is an absolutive suffix. So it's attached to a non-absolutive noun, indicating the state of being of the noun as existing. It is, or as being. I know it's kind of complicated to think about, but let's look at some examples and hopefully it'll make more sense. But this B sound usually follows plants and organic-ish foods. So there's not a total rule on it, but it's like a ish, like kind of so. Sawatni. Examples. Kutza, kutza. Kutza means of or relating to brine fly larva, non-absolutive. Kudzabi, kudzabi, brine fly larva, absolutive. Kudzabi is the little creature itself, a noun, whereas kudza just means of or relating to the brine fly larva. Notice the difference. So some say kudzabigwe, brine fly larva place. Some say kudzawe, brine fly larva place. Same thing. Kudzabigwe, kudzawe. This is why sometimes you hear people say things different, because the absolutive gets left off. Ona, 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 of or relating to salt, non-absolutive. Onabi, onabi, salt, absolutive. So ona doesn't mean salt. I'm not going to put ona on my food. I'm going to put onabi on my food. Onabi, the substance of salt, absolutive. Whereas ona is of or relating to salt, non-absolutive. Onabigwe, the place of the salts, or Onawe, place of the salts. Posida, posida, of or relating to clover, wild clover. Posida, posida, wild clover, absolutive. So this is the plant itself, where posida is of or relating to. Posida Gwe, clover place, the area in between Desert Creek and Sweetwater. So other examples of this is like Wiaba. Wiaba means the oak tree itself. Wia is the acorn of the oak, see, of. Tubapi, pinion or pine nut tree, tubapi. Tuba is the pine nut because it's of the pinion tree. Okay, now we got wava. Wava is what they call Indian rice grass, silly name. But wava, it's that little black seed, little bunch grass. But if you want to talk about of the grass, it's way. Like if I make a basket for way, it'd be a waytsida, not wava. Wava is the grass itself as its own noun. Waytsida, a basket for grass or of the grass. Same with tule, which is toib. Toib is the tule itself. Toy, of the tule. Saib, cattail. Sai, of the cattail. So this is why this absolutive suffix gets left off sometimes when we're using these words in other contexts. Matno, end of lesson 16.